For those of you who don't know what the Caxton process is, and I'm conscious there are one or two people I haven't spoken to, so you may be unfamiliar with it. It's a global review of what I suppose we can describe as our former print-led media business. As you may know, we report to the city on the performance of our print and online operation. As David Levin and others have said over the last 6 months, a year or so, our position is not sustainable in that market, in that medium. Print is the only part of UBM's business that is not growing right now. And whilst online is growing incredibly fast, 20% over the last couple of years, possibly 40% this year, it is not as profitable as we want it to be. So the purpose of Caxton is really to analyse our performance, looking at the business as investors would see it, and also to give business leaders around UBM a framework for making decisions about the future of those media franchises. Looking at the agenda today, you'll see, I think, that once we've heard from Casper and from Tom about how they're tackling quite similar issues from a national, international media perspective, we're going to look at our own situation and what are the value propositions that we're trying to create for audiences and equally for customers as well. And then in the afternoon, comes the hard bit. When you get to a point, as I have already in part of my operation, and you found that there are no viable ways forward, what do you do when you come to look at rationalisation? And Bob and Andy are going to join us this afternoon to help sort of guide us through the process as it might unfold when you come to look at either shutting or selling titles that you can't see a future for. The way this is going to work, this is very much a workshop. As a few people have remarked, it looks like a sort of low-rent television setup here, just trying to really give it a much more sort of interactive feel than the sort of more conference formats perhaps in other sessions. It is intended to be interactive. There's a group, few of us here, so please sort of shout out and interrupt us as we go forward. We've also set up a hashtag Caxton. So I'm very happy for people to tweet and in fact I'd well encourage you to do that, because we can then review afterwards what people think about what's being said, but also what people think about this as a process in itself, that will be very useful to us. Although actually people sitting there taking phone calls, doing emails, that kind of thing is less to be encouraged, I have to say. Although I'm probably not going to leap up and hit anyone who does that. The schedule's pretty tight this morning. I'm conscious of the fact that it is Friday. Some of us have been here for 4 days already, and cabin fever is kicking in. So we're going to try and keep this as fast and tight as possible. The aim is to finish by about 4:15 this afternoon. Just by way of context, and for those of you who haven't been here over the last 4 days, and this is part of a whole sort of leadership week that UBM has organised, which is embracing 5 different seminars, conferences and workshops, looking at all aspects of UBM's business. And the theme, which is quite corny, but I suppose appropriate, given that this venue in just over 12 months' time will be being used as one of the venues for the Olympic Games. In fact, more medals are going to be awarded here, I'm reliably informed, than at any other venue during the Olympics, everything from weightlifting to boxing. And I don't want to stretch the analogy too far to what we're trying to achieve. Mud wrestling might be the sort of closest analogy one can draw to trying to sort out the future of print. And the aims that have been set this week for all our business, really, to sort of stretch the athletic analogy as far as it can possibly go, is stronger performance, faster decision making and higher ambition. And I think of those 3, clearly it is very much stronger performance and faster decision making that speaks to what we're trying to do here. And to do that in a world which we know is uncertain and incredibly fast changing. one of the exercises we did earlier in the week was to look at scenario planning, looking at how the world might evolve over the next few years, and what does that mean for the decisions that we're taking. And certainly I've come away from that with a view that we've got to stress test the plans that we have going forward against what scenarios are likely to happen, because although we don't know what the world is going to do, we do need to be clear as to why we're taking the decisions that we are. And Caxton is very much part of that process. If the objective, as we started to lay down, is to achieve something like a 15% margin in our print and online business by 2014, it really doesn't need us not to think, oh, well, that's 3 years away, we'll see where we are then. We really do need to set ourselves some benchmarks for this year, for next year, and so on. And I suppose the questions for us really are, we can look at the macro and we can see that we all have a contribution to make to that. But what does it mean for our individual businesses, and how are we going to contribute to the overall goal? And once we've thought about that and tested it against the likely scenarios, then that comes to the hard decisions about where do we invest and where do we disinvest. And clearly, we can't invest everywhere. So there's some big crunchy decisions to be made there. Really in terms of looking at, what are we back, it is, and this is why the agenda's been shaped in this way, what have we got that really does provide value to our audiences and to our customers? And I think, to put it in a wider context, it's pretty obvious, certainly in the UK B2B market, that not everyone's facing up to that challenge. And I was staggered to discover recently that there are something like 4,700 B2B titles still in the UK alone, 4,700. And that's only 7% down on what it was in 2005. So how these titles are surviving, I have no idea. And only 7% down, 4,700. I mean, and goodness knows who's publishing, where they're publishing, how they're doing it, but they are still there. So it's a massively over-published environment. But it is coming. I mean, I think you may have seen EMAP, one of our rivals, yesterday announced that some of their biggest brands, Nursing Times, Local Government Chronicle, New Civil Engineer, are all going to be either taken from weekly to monthly or to go online only. And I do remember we nearly bought New Civil Engineer when we were the Builder Group in 1994, and we pulled back from the deal because the Institute of Civil Engineers, whose magazine it was, insisted that the acquirer published for 50 years. 50 years. Ouch. And I do remember there was somebody who should remain nameless who was strongly arguing that that was fine as a condition of the sale and that we should just stomach it, probably thinking that they weren't going to be around in 50 years' time to be blamed for that, and indeed they didn't last 5. But it is extraordinary that even back then, that there was a bit of a debate to be had. No one would obviously buy anything under those terms now. So things are, people are starting to move, are starting to make decisions, and clearly urgency is important. And to quote Tom's ultimate boss, Rupert Murdoch, recently, and he talked very eloquently in his inimitable style about the need for businesses like ours to run faster. And he ended this remark by saying, "Don't procrastinate, go like hell." And I quite like that phrase, "go like hell," because that's kind of what it feels like to me. And I'm sure it does to some of you as well. So the sort of questions for today, before we move on to hear from Caspar and Tom, are what are we going to do differently after today? I mean, I think, if this is going to mean something and it's going to have some value, what do we go away from thinking, we've got to change? And how do we run Usain Bolt-like in pursuit of growth and higher margins? And when, finally, are we going to take those crunchy decisions? And that's something that I'm in the middle of doing, and I'm sure you are as well. But it is worth asking ourselves that question: when is this going to happen? Because it's so easy to put it off. The budget cycle provides a nice sort of comfortable rhythm by which one can always leave something to the next quarter. But time is ticking on. So to move on to our guests here, and I'm absolutely delighted that you both found time in your busy schedules to join us. It really does help put what we're doing into a wider context and gives us a sense that we're not acting alone. And just to introduce Caspar first, he is Managing Director of FT Business and the B2B business within the FT Group, a role you've held for 7 years, I believe. He's been a board director since 2007 and is also responsible for licensing the rights to the access of, or syndication of FT content as well. He's responsible for FT Business, which includes the banker, financial advisor, so he knows our world. He understands the B2E world, and he's been with the FT since 2005. And obviously there are lots of things we want to hear from you, but I know one of the things that's in our minds, because we've been yakking about it all week, is the HTML5 move, and I believe that's part of your presentation. But I'll let you talk it through, and then I'm going to then introduce Tom, and then I know we'll have hundreds of questions, but if we could save those up for the end, otherwise we'll never move forward. So over to you, Casper.
Thanks very much.